doing oppression. If it's one, then you utilize the other to repel the oppression. So if your father is oppressing, utilize your mom to repel the oppression. If your mother is oppressing, utilize your father to repel the oppression. That's the way to do it. If both are doing it, then you get people at their level, be it their guardians, be it their parents, or be it their siblings, your uncles and aunties from both sides. You get them involved, and then they will judge if it's oppression or not. Then they will rectify. If that doesn't solve, then you go to the local community, people of authority in local community, the mu'minun, and you ask them to come and deal with it if it's actual oppression. For example, the daughter, she doesn't want to get married to someone, and the parents are forcing her to get married to someone, and she's mature, she's understanding, she's mature, she's wise, she's smart, she's educated, she understands men, and so forth and so on. They're forcing her to get married. That's oppression. Here she can go to anyone to stop the oppression. The other way around, the child is always very angry with the parents, shouting at them, swearing at them, very violent towards them. He's oppressing the parents. Here someone needs to come in. If the parents can't solve that, someone else within the family or relatives need to come in to stop this oppression. Is parents. And if family can't do it, it has to be the relatives, the local community leaders and people of authority. If that doesn't work, then he has to go to the higher authorities. The oppression has to stop. If it doesn't stop, it will continue. Now, obviously, you make dua, all of that, you make dua to Allah. That's part of your iman and tawheed and ibadah, part and parcel. But the actual action you take is to repel. Because if you don't, then others. I can give you hundreds of cases of how parents oppress children. I can give you hundreds of cases how children oppress their parents. So I deal with these cases for the last 20 years. I've been dealing with it.
Sheikh, just to follow up, I was going to ask something, but it's very similar to what the brother just asked now. So in an instance like that, I very much agree with you in terms of what you're saying, especially, for example, in my sort of cultural background and customs. If you can't deal with it at a local level, you get your community involved and the elders of the family, society, etc. I think it's fair to say, I'm sure you've seen it more than us, maybe 30, 40 years ago, that was the norm. Unfortunately now, more than before, we live in a society and an age whereby people don't want to get involved anymore to support you. And you find yourself with your back against the wall and you're exhausting yourself to do things in the right manner possible. But nobody wants to help, whether it's family, your local masjid, local communities, nobody wants to help you. So then what you find yourself is in a situation where you're like, okay, alas, I'm going to take the situation into my own hands and deal with it in a manner which may not be oppression, but which may not be the orthodox manner in which to deal with it. But in doing so, you're then bringing shame upon your family or your parents or this and that. Because in my community at least, what you find is exactly as you touched upon before, parents will say, have sabr, meaning do nothing.
Yeah.
But then if you do something, you're smearing them as well. Yeah. So it's just like, it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation?
Yeah, that's why we need to establish institutions that locally that deal with it. I've been advocating for this for a good 7 years. I've been saying that we need locally institutions, which I call the family centers. Locally I've started Fitra Center, and soon I'm going to establish family center. It needs to be done where there are scholars, leaders of the community who deal with these issues. So you can come to ourselves and we will go to your families, or they have to come to us. They have to, like there's that pressure from the community. That, have you gone to them? Have you spoken to them? And then we go in and deal with them.
So just to follow on from that. So
it's beyond just marriage and divorce.
Yeah, so just to follow on from that. So say for example you've got a case of oppression within the same family situation or whatever it may be. Now, alhamdulillah, compared to a lot of societies, we do have certain things. For example, we have the Islamic Council of Europe set up here, where they arbitrate in business matters, family matters, divorce matters, whatever it may be. Now, say for example that you're willing to go, but the other party is not willing to go. They don't want to go and deal with your Salafi sheikhs and so-so sheikh and so-so sheikh. From a Sharia perspective, what does that say about that individual? How does it implicate that person? Because obviously, in in this society, these entities, they're not legally binding in any way, and they can only ever be advisory. And the person who's doing the dhulm, obviously they know that and they take advantage of that. So where does that leave that person who doesn't even want to go to this
The thing is, that's why first there needs to be awareness of the need of those institutions. And it needs to be local. It can't be where one has to travel to be communicated by people. It needs to be set up in every masjid. There needs to be a community of leaders, elders that come together part-time and solve these issues, if need be full-time, and solve these community issues of this oppression taking place. Obviously, some of the oppressions are usually family, local feuds here. Some are major, which is family feuds. They're here, but it's also back home. So there needs to be institutions that deal with it, and then there's obviously other issues of businesses, oppression of injustices, and so forth. So these are at the local level. Once we establish these matters, a lot of us who live in the theoretical, non-existent world will come out from that world, and they will see the practical reality of the practical world, and then they will begin to establish the real Islam, which is the most practical way of living, and not the theory which they have in their mind, which is non-existent.
You mentioned about us not understanding, patience. When you have a scenario where someone might be naturally a greedy person, and someone is trying to be patient or generous with the sake of Allah, and how do you define between being patient and
when it comes to
kicking in?
When it comes to oppression, as soon as you feel that someone's oppressing you, and oppression is at the fundamental level of the existence of your survival and your living, at those levels, then there's level of obligation. Yeah. So someone, for example, constantly humiliates you, right? This is not at the fundamental level, but it's at the obligatory level now. So he's committing a major sin, and he's taking your obligatory right of honoring you as a human being and as a Muslim. He's taking that right away. So he's here is oppressing. If it's a constant, this one off will be in the category of other. If it's constant, then it's in the category of oppression, right? So you can judge. If you can't judge, you can ask people who are, I wouldn't say knowledgeable only, but who are practical people, right? Then they will see this oppression, and then they will sort of deal with that. Yeah. By oppression, there is no. When it comes to patience, when it comes to oppression, there is no patience. It's simply about taking the best of options to repel the oppression. Yeah. To remove that understanding that when it comes to dhulm, there's patience. Like there's no patience. It's taking the best action, right, to repel the oppression. There's an action there you have to take, and you take the best action. Another question.
Would you say that in the Ottomans' time, was it similar where they applied this principle?
They say these are human principles. These are not Islamic principles per se. These are human principles. But the problem with us, we have this Buddhist mindset that's taken over the Muslim Ummah. It's Buddhist mindset. It's got nothing to do with Islam. This Buddhist mindset has infiltrated Islamic texts, and we have this theory world. I keep saying that is non-existent. You don't live your life like that, because as a human you can't live life like that. It's impossible. That's why you inflict more pain on yourself, right, than repelling the oppression. And also you prolong the oppression. Yeah. There's only very few minute people that when you're being oppressed, and you don't do anything, they have empathy. These are only maybe less than 1%. Vast majority, if they oppress you and you become more like humble and human and so forth, they give in and give up, and they torture you more. 99.9% of the people. That's how the oppression is created.
So one more question. You said when someone oppresses you, when there's a matter of oppression, the hukum of Allah, the first and foremost, is to repel that oppression. So if you don't, are you sinful in that situation?
Now, if you don't, and they oppress you more, then you are sinful. You are sinful. Jalla wa ala, he says, وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَالْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ وَالنِّسَاءِ وَالْوِلْدَانِ الَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا أَخْرِجْنَا مِنْ هَذِهِ الْقَرْيَةِ الظالم أهلها واجعل لنا من لدنك. No one likes oppression. So you wanting oppression, that's nonsense. It doesn't exist. And you having the ability to repel the oppression and you don't, you're being sinful. Because you're allowing the oppressor to what? Oppress you and oppress someone else now. انصر أخاك ظالما. You have to assist him, the oppressor, by stopping him from oppressing. That's your hukum. Jalla wa'ala says, من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره what? بيده. If you see evil, you change it with your hand, i.e. with your authority. As if you have the ability. If you don't, you speak out. At least you say, don't press me, you're pressing me. You speak. All of us have a means of stopping the oppression. If you don't, you're sinful. And the last Rasulullah said, what? Is to speak. If you don't do that, if you don't have that, hate in your heart. Hate in your heart. So if your hands are tied, your legs are tied, you're being tortured, you still have to hate the oppression, the ones who are oppressing you. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. That is the weakest level of Iman. Why are you in that position in the first place? That's the question Sallallahu is asking. You should not be in that place in the first place. As soon as the oppressor oppressed, you should have stopped him there. Because you're in that place, you have the weakest of level of Iman. The problem is I now understand. Now,
what if we're seeing and witnessing oppression taking place locally or from an Ummah perspective? What should we do? I mean,
you do whatever you can to stop the oppression. The borderline is by which it doesn't bring more oppression to you. That's the borderline. So, for example, there's international legal laws, you abide by them. There's national legal laws, you abide by them, because that will then cause more harm if you don't abide by them. But within that, you still can what? Repel the oppression. If there are local norms, you abide by the local norms. For example, you get your say someone robbed you, and you know exactly who robbed you. The police couldn't catch him or do legally anything. Yeah? But you know exactly that person who robbed you. Local community also knows it. You can involve the local community, especially if he's Muslim, to return back your items. You can involve the local leaders, the local community people, elders, to return back your items. Is that clear? And he will be eventually named and shamed if you can prove that he robbed you. So this is a means you can take, not suffer in silence.
Just off the back of that, if someone, like from a Muslim community perspective, if someone is being oppressive, generally as Muslims we always talk, conceal the faults of your brother. But if he's openly oppressing you and continuously oppressing you and you're advising, and they're not taking heed, and you feel like exposing this person will help you repel that oppression, then you're not wrong in doing
When it comes to, there's a principle, again, memorize these principles. When it comes to anything going public, you do it collectively. What does that mean? You consult the Ummah's local people before you bring it to the public. That's the principle. You don't bring anything to public individually. You always consult the local Ummah and then you bring it to the public collectively. What we tend to do, we bring it to the public individually. That's wrong. That's exposing.
Is that an Islamic principle?
It's an Islamic principle. If you want to expose someone publicly, you do it what? Collectively. You gather the people around you, trustworthy, reliable, you consult with them, they consult with you, they will do the background checks on that person. Is he actually approaching? Is he actually doing this or that? After that, when there's agreement that there's no way except this person to be exposed, then they will do it together. Then you are not blameworthy. And you are not condemned, nor are you blameworthy. So anything public, you do it collectively.
You have emphasized that patience doesn't mean just not to do nothing, but to be practical, take the best option. Why is it that? Why do you think that just humanity and Muslim Ummah.
No, humanity doesn't do that.
Okay.
It's us Muslim Ummah.
The Muslim Ummah naturally say, brother, just be patient or make dua. But they don't always emphasize taking practical steps as an option.
It's because we have, as I said, we have taken the Buddhist mindset, which I even go further. If you hear my Ibn Battuta's podcast, the first episode, go to ibnbattutas.com. This is the first episode you'll benefit from, because I talk about how Islam is tangible and practical way of living. One of the things I say is not that we only have a Buddhist mindset, we have a non-existence mindset. In other words, we're living in this world as if this world is Jannah. As if this world is Jannah. But this world is not Jannah. This world is, there is clash. You're in the clash whether you like it or not.